Hi, this is Bai. How are you doing? Welcome to DIY Jun channel. I will help you to improve your DIY skills, help you to renovate your home as you wish. In this video, I'm going to talk about how to use angle grinder. You will know the basics of the angle grinder and how to use it, how to change the discs, and the safety gears. And then I will show you how to use it. Now let's start. I got two angle grinders here. One is cordless, the other one is corded. Besides that, the biggest difference of the two grinders are the size. The cordless grinder is 4.5 inches. The corded is 5 inches. 5 inches is about 125 millimeters. If you are rarely working with steel, I advise you, if you have a full set of cordless power tools like Makita, like Milwaukee, why not just buy a cordless angle grinder to match your brand? If you got a lot of steel to grind to polish, I advise you to buy a corded angle grinder. Because if you want to grind or buffing for a long time, battery is not enough. You probably need 4 to 5 batteries to run them continuously. Now I'm going to introduce the basics of an angle grinder. There's a handle right beside the disc. This is the auxiliary handle, and the main handle is on the back. Your main hand on the main handle, pulling the trigger. If your grinder is a cordless grinder like this, there's no obviously main handle, just a big bulky handle. You just grab the body. The small grinder also need auxiliary handle too. You need both hands to operating a grinder. Here is a black button, and the other grinder there's a bigger button. The function of the button is to lock the disc. So when you are changing the disc, push in the button so the disc will lock. Turn it over. There is another hole. This hole is for the auxiliary handle. You can put it on either side. Basically, when you're using it, you will use both sides. It depends on your position and the parts you are working on. It also depends on how you want to control the sparks. So you will switch the handle frequently. You must use auxiliary handle. Unless there's not enough room for you to grinding, you can take that off. When you are using a grinder, you must use a both hand. So let's turn it over. This is the guard. The main function for the guard is to guarding the sparks. It prevents the sparks shooting to you. Because when you are grinding or when you are cutting, if it is steel, there will be a lot of sparks shooting out. So if you want to control the direction of the spark, you just turn the guard. Before you start to using the grinder, you have to adjust the guard. There is a screw to holding it. You need a screwdriver to loose. When it loose, you can turn. Now the guard is very tight. Usually when you are working, the guard should be very tight. Now I make it loose. You turn it counterclockwise, just a few turns. It doesn't need to be very loose, just loose a little bit. Now you can move it. You turn it to your desired location. Now tighten the screw. And use your hand to turn the guard to double check. If it don't move, it's good. Here's the location to install the wheels. It can install a lot of different type of wheels. Regarding to how many type of wheels and how to change, we'll talk about that later. After you buy an angle grinder, there should be a tool. This tool is specialized to loose the locking nuts. We just mentioned about there's a black button. You have to push the button. There are 4 holes. So in order to loose or tighten it, you just use the wrench and push in 2 holes. So let's move on. There's a black cap. Here is where you change the brush. The brush can be used for a long time. So basically you rarely need to change it. And here is the trigger. I personally like the trigger like this. I think it's more safer. Because for any reason, if you lose control of the grinder will stop working. There's another black button right beside the trigger. This is when you push down the trigger, you push the locking trigger button, the trigger will be locked. I don't recommend you to use the trigger lock. Just forget the trigger lock. If you want to unlock the trigger lock, You just need to push the trigger another time. So the trigger lock will be popped and the trigger is unlocked. There is another type of switch, is slide switch. You slide the switch up, it will start running. You slide it down and the grinder will stop. I don't like the slide trigger. If there is any incident happening while you are using it, you lose control. Your grinder may be flying in the air, but the wheel is still spinning. It's very dangerous. If you are going to buy a grinder, my advice for you is to buy the pedal switch. You never want to buy the slide switch. It's dangerous. If you watch a lot of my videos, you will know that I was a journeyman welder. I've been working as a welder for about 6 years in Canada. So everything I'm going to teach you about the grinder are from what I've been learned from union and from the oil industry. So basically, this is the common rules that we use on the oil industry, how to safely use a grinder. It is very effective to prevent from injury. I hope you can follow the procedure. Some rules that I talk about may look like ridiculous, but I still want you to follow. First of all, let's talk about the eye protection. To be honest, no matter what you do, you should wear eye protection. Maybe using a drill, maybe a hammer drill, even you are painting, you will always want to wear an eye protection. If you are nearsighted like me, I use prescription glasses. I recommend that you make a pair of safety glasses with your prescription. When you go to your glass store, you ask for the safety glasses. All the safety glasses, they should have a certificate according to where you live. If you only want to make one pair, you'd better go for clear. If you want to make 2 or 3 for different situations, you can choose the different shade. Like in my hand, there's a 30%. You can make one even darker. So that's enough for safety glasses. If you don't have a safety glass, you can go to my Amazon store. I got a whole bunch of links about the safety gears. So the next one is the hearing protection. Because the grinder makes lots of noise. If you don't wear the hearing protection, I think after several days, you will get permanent hearing loss. There are some options for hearing protection. One is the ear muffs, or you can use the earplugs. The earplugs is one-time use. It's disposal. Ear muffs can use a lot of time. It can last very long. It depends on which one you prefer. The third safety gear is your gloves. I recommend you to use the welding gloves. You don't need to buy a pair like this, very thick, good quality. I recommend you to buy the leather gloves. Because when you are grinding, there will be a lot of sparks, particles, very hot. If you're using nylon gloves, you will get burned easily. Another reason is if it doesn't have a long cough, the hot sparks may go to your wrist. It may burn you. So the welding gloves are leather made. It protects your wrist. If you are going to use it only for a grinder, it can last very, very long. The next one we are going to talk about is the breathing protection. When you are grinding or you are cutting, you will use this kind of wheel. You will notice that there is glass fiber net on the grinding wheel. Other than that, it will emit fumes. It's bad for your health. When you breathe that in, it will stay into your lung and hurt your body in the long run. Let's look at the buffing wheel. It can remove the rust. Also, it can remove the old paint. No matter if you are grinding or buffing, you need a respiratory protection. There are 2 ways for respiratory protection. The first one is the half mask. You put it on like this. I got links on the Amazon. You can check it out. I will show you how to put this on. You put the top straps on the top of your head. It only covers your mouth and nose. It is small. The another one that I recommend is the full face. If you are going to wear the full face respirator, you don't need the safety glasses. It will protect all your face, including your eyes. On both sides, you still need a filter. Because my eyes are nearsighted, so I really want to wear my prescription glasses when I'm doing the grinding. So the full face respirator, I only use it when it was required when I was working in the power plant. If I'm working at home, I rarely use the full face. But for some other jobs, like you spraying the paint on your ceiling, you may want to consider the full face respirator. So let's talk about another thing that we commonly do not use. It is the face shield. Also, there are two ways to protect your face. The first one is using the face shield. So this face shield I'm holding is used on the hard hat. It also have the one that you can put it on your head without the hard hat. In the middle there's a strap. It can tighten onto your head. You have to buy the best quality face shield. If you have watched my previous videos, I mentioned that I had a near miss. I was using the same brand face shield. It's fiber metal. It prevents injury. Of course, the face shield was cracked. If I didn't wear a fiber metal face shield that day, I think that bit will destroy my face, or even worse. There's another way to protect your face. Just wear a welding helmet. I think it got several benefits. The first one, it can see very clear. It also protects your face very well. And some of you may be asked, why you need to protect your face? So let me explain. This is the zip wheel, or you can call it cutting wheel. It's sharp, it's very thin. This type of disc shouldn't be given any pressure. When you're using it for cutting in the full speed, it will be very hot. Sometimes even vibration, it can break in pieces. The grinder spinning speed is really fast. The shattered pieces will fly out. It's just like explosion if you hear big bang. When the grinding wheel shattered, it's just like a bullet, a piece of bullet. It can cut through your clothes. If it flies to your face, it's even worse. This is the stainless wiring wheel. When you're doing your buffing, you will find out that after a while, the wiring wheel, the wire will become shorter and shorter. Because all these wiring are actually broken. It's broken to small pieces, shorter and shorter. When we are working in the field as a welder, we need to unfold the collar to protect our neck. And we always wear the face shield, because you will always find that small pieces of the wire go through your coveralls. If you protect yourself better, just like I said, you should be fine. Regarding to the thicker grinding wheels, the chance of explosion is lower, but it still can be exploded. Sometimes after using a grinder, you didn't take off the grinding wheel. You put the tool into a toolbox, and some other tools may smash on it. It can be shattered inside your toolbox. The next time you grab it, you probably won't notice any fine cracks, but it actually broken inside. While using it, it may be exploded. So while using a grinder, if you don't have all the protection that I mentioned, I strongly against you to use the grinder. Don't mention the people don't use any protection. That is very dangerous. Next, we're going to talk about what kind of wheels it can use. How to change the grinding wheels. There are quite a lot of differences. Before we changing the wheel, let's talk about how the wheels can be locked onto the grinder. The top nut is a locking nut. If you turn clockwise, it will make it tighter. Anti-clockwise, it becomes loose and you can take that off. Here is the inner flange. The inner flange doesn't need to turn, it can take off right away. Let's look at the back side. Here is the slot. The slot on the inner flange matches the bottom, so it can be locked. When you install it, put it on first and turn a little bit. You will feel it will drop. When you turn, you feel the resistance. Generally, if you want to remove the wheels, you can use the angle grinder wrench. But sometimes you may not find the wrench, or you simply just lost it. How to take it off? All you need to do is just push the button on top of the wheel and turn the wheels counterclockwise. Then it will break it loose. Please put on your gloves. You can't use your bare hand. Turn off the locking nut and then remove the wheel. Let's look at these two grinding wheels. These two grinding wheels are thinner. This is zip cut. You will find a lot of information on the grinding wheel. For example, let's look at the zip wheel. It doesn't allow you to grind. You can't use any angle to grinding. You can only cut with this wheel. the cut is 90 degrees. This wheel is a little bit thicker. It can cut straight cut, and it can do a light duty grinding. On your grinding wheels, you will find such information. Please read it carefully. Now we're gonna put this on. Usually we put one side with the print, put it down. On the inner flange, there is a metal ring in the center. The locking nut is interesting. In one side, it got a raised metal ring, but on the other side, the metal ring sunk. When you install the thin grinding wheel, the sunken ring face down. You can use the grinding wrench to tighten it. Push the lock button to hold the wheels, and you just turn it. There's another way, just like I said. One hand hold the button, turn it clockwise. You don't have to turn really hard. Maybe just 1/4 of your full strength, that's enough. Now let's take off the wheel, push the button, then turn it off. Next one, we install the little bit thicker one, the print face down. For all the thinner grinding wheels, the locking nut sinking side face down. Now it's tight, ready to use. When you start using the grinder, the wheel is going to be locked tighter and tighter. If you use the wrench to tighten the wheel really hard, when you're using the grinder, it will become hot. It might be tighter. It will become really hard to remove. So just use the proper strength to tighten the wheel. Next, let's install the thick grinding wheel. When you put the thicker grinding wheel on the inner flange, you will find out the grinding wheel is a lot higher than the inner flange ring. So when you're locking it, you have to put the raised ring side down. Push the button, turn it clockwise. Now the thick grinding wheel was tightened by the both rings from the locking nut and from the inner flange. It's very tight. These three kind of grinding wheel, the difference is mainly the thickness. The material are basically the same. Just want to emphasize, it can only be used for cutting, not for grinding. The meaning of grinding is using the side to remove metal. For cutting, you can only use the edge of the grinding wheel. When it comes to thicker grinding wheels, it can do a light duty grinding, and it also can be cutting too. For this type of thickness, you just can't use it for cutting because it's too thick. So this will only have one function, is for grinding. Alright, that's enough for this type of grinding wheels. Let's talk about some other type of wheels. Let's talk about the difference of the grinding and the buffing. This is the buffing wheel, and this is the grinding wheel. The grinding wheel can remove everything from the surface. The metal I talk about here is the steel. For other metals, maybe aluminum, maybe it's not that good. You can use the grinding wheel to remove everything on the steel. And grinding on steel is very efficient. When it's grinding, it becomes hot. The metal melt and shoot it out like sparks. Now let's talk about the buffing. Buffing can remove the rust, also can remove the old paint, also the debris on the surface of the metal. Some debris or scales on the steel are very tough to remove. You may not remove them using the wire wheel, but the wire wheel usually will not remove metal, only the surface cleaning. This is the flopper wheel. Actually, this is the sanding paper, put them together. It is used for fine polishing. It can polish the metal, very shiny. It's just not good for cleaning and remove metal. If the surface you are dealing with got lots of debris and paint, you'd better use the wire wheel first. The flap wheel will consume pretty fast. Next, let's install the wire wheel. There's a big nut on the wire wheel. When you install it, you need to remove the inner flange. After you remove the inner flange, the nut side facing down, you just turn on the bolt. While starting to turn it, there's some resistance from the guard. Because the safety guard is 5 inches and the wire wheels are 5 inches too. there's a little bit taper on the safety guard. After you go through the taper, and then will be easier to turn. Please wear the gloves using the wire wheel. The last step, you need to wear a leather glove to turn it tight. Or you can lock it with a wrench. Also, you need to push the button. Usually when we tighten it, we just use the glove, never use the wrench. Now you can see the center bolt, just a little bit lower than the flange on the wire wheel. If you don't remove the inner flange, the center bolt won't fully attach to the wire wheel. It can be dangerous. So please remember, remove the inner flange when you install the wire wheel. Now we are going to install the flap wheel. There's no nuts, so we have to put the inner flange back. Remember, when you put it on, turn a little bit. It will drop. The side with the print face down. Actually, flapper wheel is pretty thick. So for install the thicker wheels, you need to put the raised ring. The same way, push the button and then turn to tight. There's another wheel, it is the diamond wheel. You can use the diamond wheel to cut stone, to cut tile, like masonry stuff. For example, if you need to cut a hole inside a tile, you can use the diamond wheel on the grinder. So put this in. The thickness is like the thin grinding wheel. So the sunken ring face down. Push the button and turn tight. If you want to take it off, just reverse process. When you use the diamond cutting wheel on the grinder, don't add any water to cool it down. It is not a wet saw. That is totally different. It's very dangerous to put water while you're cutting. It is for dry cut. Since it's a very powerful tool and spins very fast, and someone may think that it's good for cutting wood. So maybe you just bought a 4 or 5 inch saw blade. It is very dangerous. You shouldn't use it. The next we talk about the safety mechanism on the grinder. There are 2 important safety features. The first one is the guard. The safety guard, you will never take that off. You must leave it on while you are using the grinder. You can change the guard direction to control the sparks. The other safety feature is the left or right handle. In some tight situation, the other hand holding the angle grinder body. If you want to know if the disc can be used on the grinder, besides the size, like 4 inch, 4.5 or 5 inch, 7 inch, 9 inches, you need to check your grinder's spinning speed. You can find information on your user manual. If the grinder speed exceeds grinding wheel max speed, it may be explode or other safety issues. Before you start working, you must check your surroundings. Is there anything flammable? Is there anybody close by? Did you secure the working place? You shouldn't aiming the spark to anybody or anything flammable. That's very dangerous. If there are some flammable that you just can't move, so you have to cover it. Now I'm going to use the grinder to do some projects. Before you start to use a grinder, put on every single piece of safety gear that I talked about earlier. Use your both hand to hold the angle grinder. You need to hold it very tight and then pull the trigger. After you pull the trigger, you need to wait for 3 to 5 seconds. The disc can reach the full speed. When you heard angle grinder sound is stable, it means it's reached the max speed. And then you start to touching the pieces you want to cut or grind. When you release the trigger, you don't put it on the table right away. You need to wait until it stops spinning. If it's still spinning, you put it on the table, it will catch on the table and fly away. That's dangerous. When you are using the wire wheel, basically they are the same operation method. You can use the wire wheel's edge, or you can buffing just use the side of the wire wheel. You can buffing like this. You can use any angle. You can adjust your position and how you grab the angle grinder to control the spark shooting direction. You can hold the angle grinder like this, start grinding, or you just turn it over so the spark shooting the other way. Or grinding like this way. You can totally control the sparks shooting direction. Also, the guard is there to help you to control the sparks. So when you're using a grinder, you have a lot of choice, the angle you want to use it to achieve your goal. Now let's talk about the kickback. Actually, kickback happens in a lot of power tools, like circular saw, table saw. Angle grinder is not exception. The most possible reason for kickback for angle grinder is that when you're using a cutting wheel, you see the cutting wheel is totally immersed inside. If just a little bit twist, the disc may just jam inside the metal. Or you're just cutting a piece of metal and the metal have some bending or some strength pushing down. So as you're cutting it, the metal may just getting tighter and tighter. It may cause the disc as well. If the disc get caught, it may cause kickback. If the disc is broken, it may just explode it. To prevent kickback, you should control the angle grinder goes straight without any twist when you're cutting. Trying to make sure there's not a lot of strength inside the metal. You need to hold the grinder really tight. You never want to use it only by one hand. When kickback happens, it may just like this. It can kick back directly to your face. Or it can going down. It's very dangerous. But if you use your both hand to hold it tight, when kickback happens, it reduces the chance the grinder can hit you. Your both hands still can grab the angle grinder if it kicks back. When you're using a wire wheel, it also can kick back. The wire is very stiff. You cannot bend those wires. When it's spinning really fast, it can cause a lot of damage. If you're buffing on a flat surface, that's alright. When you're buffing something, it's not a flat surface. For example, this fence, you touch the edges really hard, it may just kick back. The most important way to control the kickback, both hands hold your grinder tight. Put all the safety gears when you're using it. Make sure the safety guard is on and tight. Also, the guard should protect you because first one, you don't want spark shooting at you. Two, if it does kick back, the guard will hit your face shield first, not the disc. Now let's do some projects. I got an X, so this project is just to remove some rust on the old X. So what we want to do is first to remove the rust. Also the X is very dull. Next we wanted to sharpen the X. Last we want to do some polishing. Just want to make it look better. This is one of the project. The another project is just simply cut the metal. Later I will cut this off. I think after these two projects, you should be better understanding how to use a grinder. Now let's get started. I usually put a safety glass inside the case, and in there also put a hearing protection earplugs. So that's very convenient. Also, you need to check your clothes. You can't have a very loose clothes when you are working with grinder. The best material will be the cotton. For face protection, I just use my welding helmet. It is clear, actually you can see through. You don't need to buy a welding helmet for grinder. You just need to buy a face shield. For the next part, we want to clamp the X onto the table. Now I'll show you how I do it, and then we'll start grinding. Usually when you're using a grinder, you should choose the metal clamp, like this C-clamp. It got a big opening. You can use the C-clamp to clamp something very thick, bulky. If it is thin, you can use the vice grip. That is another convenient tool. For this project, why we need a metal clamp? Because when you start grinding or cutting, it becomes really hot. I just clamp it like this. When you're using the clamp, you're gonna consider where your spark going to shoot. If you think that's not enough, we put another one on the back. If it is far away from the spot you're grinding, you can use plastic clamps. This project to this point, you can see the result. On this side, I first buff and then grind, and the last I do the polishing. You can see the metal is shining. This side I didn't do the polishing. There's a big difference. Actually, grinding on the X blade is not a good idea. You have to control the temperature. If you can't control the temperature well, you will change the quality of the metal. Maybe after the grinding, your X blade is not as durable as before. Like what I did, the blade turns blue. It means that temperature is too high. Alright, let's do some cutting. Usually when you plan to cut metal, you need to make a mark. Sharpie is not good, so you have to use a chalk stick. But for this project, it's so simple, so I don't need to make a mark. So let's talk about how do you cut it. This is the line of fire. Your body should avoid this line. If the disc get caught and kick back, it will come back along this line. If you're new, you'd better not start cutting right away. First, follow the line. You use the grinder disc to make a mark, to cut it shallow. You may not cut straight. After done that, you can do the deep cut. Now I will show you. Angle grinder spins really fast and is very powerful. If you can handle it, it is a very good tool. If you don't follow the right procedure to using the grinder, or you don't use enough safety gear to protect yourself, it may hurt people badly. So when you're using an angle grinder, please follow my instruction. Alright, if you find this video helpful, please leave me a like. If you want to buy the angle grinder, you want to know which one I recommended, please check the links below. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. See you next time. Bye bye.